we are going to continue our day with our next guest, with Becca Williams. Becca, are you there with us? Can you please unmute yourself?
Unmute I have.
Thank you so much for joining us on this magical Saturday. We have all the wonderment of the industry going on today, and I would love to turn this over to you with the esoteric role in healing that cannabis plays. This is going to be really, really good. And I have a very special personal guest that is watching. So you know who you are. Enjoy this one. Thank you, Becca.
Jessica, Denise, Charles, I mean, the whole crew is terrific to be with you. I have to say, first and foremost, I love what you're doing. You're giving exposure to all aspects of the cannabis plant. And yeah, in fact, I mean, I probably wouldn't be here today if you didn't have your big, wide embrace of cannabis, because as you mentioned, what I do with the plant is not all that widely known. It's kind of esoteric. So yeah, thank you very much for what you guys are doing and educating us all about the really countless aspects of cannabis.
Oh, you are welcome. And we are just getting started. This is going to be the great, fun, grand adventure in the cannabis world.
Yeah, and it has been for a few years from what I understand. What, 3 years now for you guys?
Officially 2, yes.
2 years. Okay, very good. So what I do is I navigate what I call the third wave of cannabis. And the watch phrase across the board is that it's not about getting high, it's about getting well. And whether it's heightening, enjoyment and creativity in recreational or what we call adult use, or if it hurts, cannabis can do this or that. And then and that's medical cannabis, obviously. And then in my work, as an emotions therapist and healing emotional pain, this is the third wave of cannabis. It's an area of expertise that is quite different from the other 2 waves of cannabis. And I incorporate it into what we call emotional liberation therapy, which I can say more about later. But let me begin by saying that, when we have a serious health issue and we're in pain, we want to get out of pain as soon as possible, right? So we go to a doctor or a chiropractor, or, I'm a clinical nutritionist or some other practitioner to get to the bottom of it. And to get to the bottom of it, we want a diagnosis so that we know how to heal it. And so your practitioner is asking you questions. Might involve some testing and using diagnostic tools, and we come away with a treatment plan, and that might be surgery or some kind of adjustment or prescription medicine or supplements. As I say, as a clinical nutritionist, I like supplements. So for example, I hurt my shoulder, so I went in, I got it adjusted. I was given therapeutic exercises to do and might go into some physical therapy. So we know what we need to do when we have some kind of physical challenge with our body. Yeah. But when it comes to emotions, and I'm talking about difficult emotions, anxiety, depression, anger, self-doubt, loneliness, all kinds of mood disorders. How do we deal with these unruly feelings that can have such a devastating impact on our life? And the way I look at it, it's a different form of being injured or sick. It's impacting our brain and mind health. And man, it has perplexed us forever. And it really shows. I mean, we have a crisis in our society with people struggling with all of these mood disorders. It's of epidemic proportions. I mean, we have 40 million American adults diagnosed alone with anxiety disorders, and that's just the people who have been diagnosed. So how to deal with them. When it comes to brain and mind health, we are in the Stone Ages compared to how modern medicine can fix our bodies. How do we fix these feelings that we can't touch, we can't operate on, that we can't see? Basically, it looks like we're going along, and somebody says something or somebody does something, or we might have an errant thought, and we are triggered and we are just off to the races. We have this emotional flooding, like, this tsunami that comes over us, and we don't know what's going on. If it's anger or a feeling of unworthiness or anxiety, it goes on and on. And so, and I'm going to get to where the cannabis comes in here, but I want to say, in the framework, how does this wonderful plant fit in? Well, in a remarkable discovery in regard to emotions, about 5 years ago, my colleague, his name is G.M. Carlson, he's out of LA, he's a yogic therapist of 40 years. He has tapped into the genius of why our difficult emotions are here. And that's where my work comes in, and where the cannabis comes in as well. In this method we call emotional liberation. And in this approach, we learn to listen to our difficult emotions, and we actually are going inward and learning what each emotion that's knocking loudest on our head is saying to us, and how to get to the core of it so we can release the emotion and the trauma that's holding it in place. And let me just say at this juncture that the new contemporary understanding of trauma, and remember, it used to be, oh my God, something horrible happened to us, whether it was war or a difficult and challenging childhood, whatever that might be. Well, what we understand now is that trauma is on a spectrum, and that most all of us have incurred some kind of trauma in our lifetimes. So to be able to understand that is, why do I get angry all the time at my partner, for instance? It just comes out. I mean, you see anger all over. People are crawling behind the wheel of their cars, and you go out and you interact with these people, or you are one who is angry behind the wheel, whatever, and you're just kind of in this enclosed environment, trying to move out your anger. And the dirty little secret is you don't do it. And the fact of the matter is that you think that you're ticked off at that guy who might have pulled out in front of you, and you're upset about that. But really, we just get behind the wheel because we have so much anger to begin with, and we kind of use the excuse of driving and all the fools that are on the road for it. So anyway, in moving and navigating through emotions, it involves a number of tools that embrace Eastern wisdom traditions and the intentional use of cannabis to amplify and accelerate emotional healing, emotional recovery. And I'm a clinician, and I very closely follow emotions in Western science and the research behind it. Working with emotions is more of an art than a science, because in order to get to the core of mood disorders and difficult emotions, we use a form of meditation. Now, this meditation is very active and very expressive. It's not like the quiet sitting meditation that is very popular, but really so hard for so many people. I mean, really about 8 out of 10 people who I talk to on a regular basis when I interact in regard to emotional recovery, they have tried the mindfulness meditation, and they just sit there with these pounding thoughts, and they just can't do it. And that was the way with me too. So we use we bring in something from the Eastern wisdom tradition called Kundalini, whether you've heard about it or not, but that's where there's this very active and expressive form of movement that includes the movement and sound and breath work. And so we're taking our lead in regard to the cannabis from the long honored traditions of the East and going in an inner exploration. And we use this to actually create windows into other levels of consciousness to do this work. And this is where the cannabis comes in. We can amplify the process with the judicious use of cannabis. You might have heard about the psychic healing power of cannabis, and in the context of essentially reducing the egoic mind and allowing for the release of trapped mental, emotional, and physical energies. And they can be at the root of the cause of anxiety or stress or depression, stuckness oftentimes, and overwhelm. And so, our overactive brains need something more to help settle the pounding onslaught of thoughts or dissociation that can interfere with our process of getting past the mind to connect with the emotions that are tethered to, as I explained, that trauma that we know in Western science. It has been documented that trauma lives in the tissues of our body, and the $64,000 question. I don't know. Maybe I'm showing my age. What is it up to now? The $1 million question is how to get it out. And so we do this work, and we bring in cannabis to amplify the process. And we know that it hails from Eastern civilizations where there were yogis sitting in caves, and to this very day in India, where there are sadhus and wise people who are using cannabis to go inward. And in Western research, cannabis, for me to bring in this inquiring minds in the Western world want to know, well, what's going on? How is that happening? So I turn to Western science, and as you know, is underscored here time and time again in our world of cannabis. We didn't have any research for more than 40 years around cannabis. So we're kind of trying to catch up, and we are in many ways sadly behind. But what we do know is that cannabis has been shown to, especially CBD, but judicious combinations of CBD and THC have been shown to relax the fight or flight response, as in anxiety, which greatly enhances our ability to focus and be present during this emotional liberation work. And what I often call it, in my students and clients sometimes say, I don't like the word meditation because I don't want to meditate. And, we can go out and we can go to the gym and, we can work out and, that's what we'll do. So I have taken for some of my people calling this neuro workouts, because what we are doing is we are strengthening our nervous system, and that's really pivotal to the work of bringing up these emotions so that we can, as I say, meet them, greet them, so we can release them. And cannabis, along with that, has been shown to enhance the process of neuroplasticity. And that is the brain's ability to form and reorganize synaptic connections to develop new patterns of thought and behavior. So that's a little download on what we do, and kind of an overview of how we do it. Yeah. So I'm just going to keep going because I'm not hearing anybody come back. So I'm thinking that I have the luxury of this time. And
well,
let me see. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, we do have questions and stuff like that for you as well. However, we really wanted to give you the opportunity to present and tell us about what you have. You've got this strong, background in media.
Oh,
yeah.
I
was
do.
public,
Yes.
Was the public awareness and education your primary motivation for entering into the cannabis industry? You did come from NPR.
I did. And probably more germane to our arena here, I did come from National Public Radio. I worked in television in Chicago and other markets. And most recently, about 2014, I was actually producing a television show for a network called Free Speech TV Network, and it was called Marijuana Straight Talk. Marijuana Straight Talk. Before marijuana was kind of a pariah word, right? It never ceases to amaze me. It never ceases to amaze me that we're very careful. Those of us in the arena are very careful to not say marijuana anymore. But the media always, all the time, and in legislation, right? It's always about marijuana, called marijuana. So I don't know. It's kind of an ironic thing. But yeah, I worked in media for most all of my adult life, and I was one of these people who I was roiled with anxiety, and I had a lot of oh my gosh, anger and depression. And I think that although most of us manage to look fine, we all have an inner world that is often dark and difficult to navigate. And that was me. And so I entered into a program where I was introduced to this work, emotional liberation, while I was producing this show. And I was self-medicating with cannabis, as I had been since college, guys, since college, in order to feel better. And this work just bowled me over. I was producing at the same time I was investigating and going through this program called Emotional Liberation. And I realized that I started getting in touch with what was going on for me and what was driving me. And I mean, I could go into a lot of, the deep burrowing of psychobabble and all of that, but I carried a lot of trauma from a very difficult childhood. And that's, and these difficult emotions were tethered to that. And every day of my life, I mean, I would wake up in anxiety. I would go through my life, my day in anxiety, and I would wind up and go to bed with it. And I just was always looking, like so many people who come to me, always looking for something to feel better. And cannabis was about as close as it came to it. And while I was under the influence, I felt better. But the fact of the matter is when I was no longer under the influence, the feelings would come back. So one thing led to another. And I won't go into the minutiae of that, but I was introduced to this work, emotional liberation, and it had a lot of the yogic principles to it, which I'm a clinician. It was really something that I didn't really want to go there, and meditation hadn't been particularly helpful for me. But the step-by-step codified approach with these very strong practices and the learning that it ran, I felt so much better. I was going through like a 9-month program with my teacher at the time, who's now my colleague, and realizing such incredible healing, where I would find myself calm and just really it's so much easier to be aware when you have all of the anxiety and self-doubt and anger and the stress out of the picture. And I started just navigating in calm, centered clarity. And I said, and as I was doing this in this first year, I was in a group with about 12 other people. I microdosed cannabis, and it was amazing, guys. I saw that I was moving through this work at an accelerated pace. And I let my colleague know about it, and he just, he was all ears, but he just said, "Hey, Becca, that's what you do. I'm committed to just the practices, and I do not add any outside substances. But if that's what you want to do as a clinician and a facilitator of this work, you go right ahead. Well, that's what I have been experimenting with, and I live in Florida now, but back in Denver, where I lived there up to about 2 years ago, and it's the liberal policies of cannabis legalization. I had ongoing cannabis elevation ceremonies at my in my home, and I was able to do a lot of this work. People coming into my world, and we were doing this, and it's all experiential. And the beautiful part about it is that there's the strong safety profile of cannabis is so established that if you do it one way one time and it didn't work out so well, you just go a different way and do it. So the combination of being able to do that. But let me back up and say that it was such a revelation for me that I just dropped my work as a producer and a host, television host, because what I saw was a way to help people. And of course, I am a registered dietitian, and so I am in one of those helping professions as well. And to see that the epidemic of these difficult emotions that are just burning down everybody, that I could be helpful that way, I just abandoned my work so that I could do this. And so in about 2015, I pivoted and started teaching this. And it was a little daunting, but I loved it. It was my passion to be able to reach out and support people in healing. Is really the highest and best service for my set of skills. So yeah, that's what we do. And in my coursework, we include readily. It's always optional, but we readily include cannabis, plant medicine, in order to bring this stuff up so that we can release it. And my students swear by it, and it's always optional. But even it's CBD to THC, or a little. I always like a 2-to-1 CBD THC to consciously work with. So I see you've come back on, Jessica. So maybe you have some questions or guidance or thoughts. I forget how much time we have here.
Absolutely. We got just about 5 more minutes here. And I have a question for you, since I want to keep it within the train of thought that we've got going on here. And then I'll see if Charles would like to hop in and ask with any questions. So what strains of cannabis do you think pairs best with what you are doing? And tied with that, if you would like to wrap it in, I've got a question about what cannabinoid you use as emotions are processed through breathing. So they're kind of one and the same sort of question. They could be separate, but I think they kind of tie together personally.
It's a beautiful question, and I have a really hard line to walk, because my students come from all over the world, and all over in varying states. And we know, like there's some states, Mississippi, Alabama, that don't really do a whole lot with cannabis. And so online, as we do over Zoom now, what I have to do is be very general in regard about it, Jessica. If I had my druthers, I would suggest to everybody, I like Harlequin as a strain to be able to use. But you go from strain, you go from state to state or country to country, and you're kind of, those people who don't have ready accessibility to various forms of cannabis, they just get whatever they can get. And so I have to be very general in regard to that. And what I say is this, that this work this work is the engine. Cannabis can be the lubrication for the engine. So what we want to do with cannabis is start low and go slow until we know better. And so if somebody doesn't know what they have, if they're getting it from a supplier, then just, take, if you're vaping or smoking, just 1 or 2 tokes. And that goes the same even if you know what you have, is to start low and go slow. And again, when I was in Denver, it was easy in live to say, here's some dispensaries, and here are some strains, cultivars that I like that you might want to seek out. And I can't do that today because it's all over the map. And where one strain may be available, it's not going to be available at any other place. And now we know these strains are all mixed up anyway. So really, for me, in describing it, it's about having a kind of a hybrid between that sedating and that energizing. We don't use those words sativa and indica so much anymore because we know that those have been crazy mixed up. But yeah, to do that and to find or blend like a 2 to 1. So 2 part CBD to 1 part THC until you know better. And then I have some people, I have a lot of people, older people. I mean, my demographic is all over. I get a lot of millennials, men and women, and older people. I mean, in our latest class, the youngest, youngest 24 years old, and the oldest was 74, and everything in between. And so, I have baby boomers who tried it in high school, and because of the war on drugs, and then millennials with the DARE program, and they're coming back in, they're tiptoeing in, and sometimes the best portal of entry is CBD. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I am with you on Harlequin. Years ago, back in 2015, when I actually discovered Harlequin for my migraine headaches that I suffered from, and that to me was a godsend at that point, because taking prescription medicine let alone over the counter, by the time that it actually got into the system, I was already puking it up with the migraines. So once I got turned on to Harlequin, organic Harlequin at that,
Yes,
back in 2015, it was, and to be able to have relief within moments of my head no longer going to explode was just magical. So I mean, I can speak to the benefits of the plant in so many different ways, as well as the emotional aspects, and utilizing it on a very I'm trying to remember the word that you used, a sprinkling, microdosing, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Really can make a big difference. Thank you so much. Charles, I don't know if you have any questions. If you do, you're welcome to unmute yourself and turn yourself on.
All right.
Show, thank you for that permission. I missed. I missed,
I mean, after all, this is started on Zoom, so we can play with that whole fun aspect of. I'm kind of rolling with the puns on this one, but
I love it.
So I missed. I had a rainstorm go through, and I missed most of your presentation, Becca. But there was one question I wanted to ask, and I'm sorry if you already covered it or it was already asked. But how does cannabis help people facilitate breakthroughs?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about for my talk. But the short of it is, in the work that we do. So my work is a whole method, emotional liberation, and we embrace ancient Eastern wisdom that incorporates a lot of movement and sound and breath work to actually stir up the physicality and the energetic body. An Eastern yogic term, the energetic body, so that we can move up the emotions, difficult emotions, or the trauma, Charles, and release it. And what happens when we use the judicious use of cannabis, it amplifies everything in order to do this. Yeah, and I would just like to say yeah, go ahead.
I can't wait to go back and watch your presentation when I don't have a rainstorm going through. But being out in the country and using satellite internet, I'm at the cloud's mercy.
It sounds romantic. Oh my gosh! And I just want to say that if anybody listening wants to experience this, I do a regular event monthly that's called Advanced Techniques to Strengthen Your Mind, Brain, and Nervous System. And that's what it's all about in order to handle these emotions. And during the course of that time, we do, during the gathering, we honor and acknowledge the cannabis plant, and people are invited to partake during the course of that time. And then we move in to these powerful practices. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
I'd love to come.
Yeah, and you can find out all about it at my website, which is easy, BeccaWilliams.org. That's it.
Excellent. That's exactly what I was going to ask you to close out with as we move on to our next guest. Becca, thank you so much. Please tell the audience again how they can reach you.
Sure. So thank you for having me. My name is Becca Williams, and it's just easy to find me. I think it's just going to my website. Everything is there. It's BeccaWilliams.org. Easy peasy. Yeah.
Thank you. We love easy peasy, Becca. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jessica.